Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Peña Knives Bravo Pocket Knife. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank Enrique Peña of Peña Knives for sending this guy along. He reached out to me some time back, said, "Hey Nick, I got some stuff I want you to check out. Send me one of these guys to take a look at." And I told him, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. It might be a gem, might be junk. He did still send it along. Nonetheless, we do have to assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I'm doing my best not to let that affect the nature or the quality of my review. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. What we're going to see here is that this is actually maybe a little bigger than you'd expect, but not huge. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica and the Ontario Rat number 2, and what we're going to see here is that this is pretty, it's in line, right? It is actually a little bit bigger than I thought it was coming out of the box here, but it's not huge. Here it is against the Spyderco PM2, and what we're going to see here is yeah, not a gigantic knife. Here it is against the Peña Knives Front Flipper Zulu, another one of his X-Series pocket knives, and we see that this is larger than what we've maybe come to expect from Enrique. So there is that. And then finally, actually, I want to do a quick thickness comparison and show you that this guy is actually a little bit thicker than the Spyderco PM2, which is actually a little bit surprising, although it's actually not so far off of the original of the front flipper Zulu here. So this is a relatively thick knife, even though it is not a particularly large one. Next thing, what is this? Who is Peña? Well, Enrique Peña is a knife maker based out of Texas here, and he has done a lot of work. He's done a lot of custom knives, but lately he's been doing a lot of work in what he calls his X-Series. And the X-Series is a series of knives that are being produced by Rayot, which is a Chinese knife factory. They are based, well, out of China, as Chinese would generally imply, right? But he has done a lot of work with them, where he gives them the plans, he gives them ideas, etc., and then they put the knives together, and he then ships them along. And this is a part of that X-Series, and this one is going to be sold through Peña Knives. He's told me they're going to be dropping actually a few days after Blade Show 2022, so, do keep that in mind and check the comments. He said he's going to let people know when the exact drop date is there, so there you go. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting knife. So on the good side, to start with, the price of this guy is $275. This is a price that is basically fine, right? It's not like, oh my God, value, but at the same time, it's not particularly ripping my face off either. If you're loving this knife, I think you're going to pay it quite happily. But it also won't be a price that is strong enough to sway you if it's not a design that's appealing to you, and so I think the price is fine. Next thing, this does have an interesting feature, and if you watch the disassembly, you'll see this better, but what Peña has actually done is he has put a lock bar insert right here into a liner lock. That is not something that I have ever seen done before, right? You've certainly got bolster locks where it's like a frame lock, etc., but this is a liner lock with a lock bar insert. This prevents any kind of a lock stick situation, adds a little bit of durability. Is it crucial? No, but it is kind of a cool thing to see, and I do love seeing innovation in the space. That's an absolutely beautiful thing. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, this is really nice. This is good to go. It has a very nice shape in the hand. It's very basic, but that little bit of rounding makes it fill the hand very well. Your finger goes right where you expect it here with a little bit of extra jimping here. This just works really, really nicely in the hand. Ergonomically speaking, this is very nice with a nice broad clip, which is also rounded along the top. This is just quite good in the hand. I appreciate that very much. Next thing, blade on this guy. Blade here is a nice Wharncliffe style. It's not exactly directly a Wharncliffe, right? If we take out our ruler here, and by the way, we can see that the blade here measures just under 2.5 inches. But if we take out our ruler as a straight edge, what we see is that the tip of the blade does pick up off of the bottom there, which gives it a little tiny bit of belly for some kinds of cutting. But this is a Wharncliffe style blade, which are very, very good for draw cuts and that kind of thing. So it's a nice shape. The steel here is M390, which is among the very best pocket knife steels out there. No complaints particularly there. And it is performed up to what I would expect for an M390 knife, so that's a good thing. But again, I didn't do rigorous testing here. It is also ground reasonably thin. It's not ground super duper thin, but it is, let's see if I can show this off here. It is thin enough, right? It is not obnoxiously thick, right? They could definitely go a little thinner. We'll talk about that later, but it is ground to a point where it will cut reasonably well. And then finally, it has a very nice swedge along the top there, which I do appreciate, and yeah, so the blade is nice. Next thing, this has a very nice smooth action. It has a very solid detent for the thumb stud. It pops open very reliably, no trouble there. Absolutely easy to go. And it is also fine as a front flipper, detent-wise, although a little bit stronger of a detent than you might have asked for in a front flipper directly. But it is absolutely a good-to-go action, and it is very smooth on the close, right? It's not the most drop-shutty thing ever, but given that there's no flipper tab, I'm actually kind of, that feels better, right? Having something that is glassy and a little bit slower makes it feel a little bit less like a loose cannon than having a, drop-shut knife with nothing to stop it from dropping shut onto you. So, it's a very nice action for what it's doing. You also have a variety of opening methods, as I just alluded to. You can use the thumb studs, which are dual-sided, right? So that's nice and means you could actually, if you have the skill to do it, you can use your index finger to pop the thumb stud out there. That's not a thing I generally do. But you can also use the thumb stud with your thumb with no wrist flick anyway. And you can also use this little bit right up here, which does have jimping, as a front flipper and pop the knife out that way. This is a very, very nice thing. I will say that the front flipper part of this is a little bit on the small side, right? You have relatively little to engage with, so it's not as comfortable to me as a front flipper, but the thumb stud works great, and to me, that's a beautiful thing. Then finally, it is a nicely finished knife by and large. There is exactly one area where I'm going to complain. We'll get there later on, but by and large, Rayot has done relatively nice work here, and they generally do, right? All of the various things that are supposed to touch well, everything. There aren't major gaps. There aren't major troubles. With one exception, this is a very nicely finished knife. So to me, all that is the good. It is nicely finished. It has an option for how you want to open it. It has a nice smooth action, a nice blade, solid ergos, an innovative lock bar insert on a liner lock, which I love to see, and it is $275, a price which is fine. On the great side, to me, actually, the thing that is that is best about this knife are the aesthetics. To me, this is a very attractive knife. To start with, you have very, very nice micarta. You can already see some bit of patina developing on it here, but this may be the best micarta I have seen on a knife coming out of a Chinese factory. That is very often. This is, by the way, just an observation. Very often that is a pain point. I've seen many makers struggle to get really nice, high-quality micarta, which has a nice mix of both the fabric feeling as well as some of the resin. Very often you'll get resin bombs, or you'll get like basically where it's just like fabric that happens to be holding together barely. This is very, very nice micarta here, and that's often a pain point, and it's good to see it. But you also get very nice accents here. This backspacer here is actually copper. This is an actual chunk of copper, as is the pivot collars on both sides here. And I think the green combined with the copper is very attractive. It has a very, very nice feel. And it is sort of balancing that line between very traditional and sort of understated, but also a little bit militaristic, also a little bit more modern, right? I feel like this exists in a very nice space, and it shows Peña, I think, flexing a little bit, right? Because very often Peña is known for doing designs that feel very traditional, and this feels much more modern, but it also has that sensation of like, it's really hard to say exactly why I like this aesthetically, but I very much do. And so to me, what's great about this knife 100%, and the most compelling part of it, is the attractiveness of the knife, generally speaking, and the cohesiveness of the materials and the design. On the bad side, to start with, for whatever reason, and this is a really dumb thing for me to say, so you're welcome to just wipe this off the record, but it feels a lot bigger than it is. And I think this is partly because it is unexpectedly thick, right? This is a knife that is substantially thicker than a lot of what you've got out there in the world. Like I said, if we put this guy up next to a Spyderco PM2, we see that this is actually a little bit thicker than the PM2, right? Even though it is a relatively compact knife. It's also partially the weight. This knife is a little bit heavier than you might expect. This guy is coming in at 3.94 ounces for a little under 3¼ inches of blade. That's a little bit of weight here. And I think I also just expect Peña's stuff to be a little bit smaller more broadly, but so it just ends up feeling very big. When I got it out of the package, it was like, oh, I thought this thing was going to be, like this size, but it's this size instead, right? So that is definitely a thing. Next thing, this guy has very prominent pivot screws and pivot hardware. What we see here is that yeah, that's definitely sticking up there, and this is too. And considering that the knife itself is already quite thick, I'm not sure it really needed much more in the way of thickness here. It's not the end of any world, certainly. I'm not really dragging them too hard for it, but it definitely feels like, wow, that's a whole choice. And given it might be an aesthetic thing, I don't really have a strong sense of it. And it does make it feel a little more traditional, but at the same time, whoa, that's some beefy hardware there. Next thing, this has a very shallow carry clip. If we grab a little microfiber cloth here, Let's see here. This might even be, hey, it is a Peña cloth, right? So if we take a Peña cloth here and we fold it over, simulating a human pocket, or frankly a dog pocket, doesn't really matter. Dogs don't generally have pockets, but if dogs did have pants, I'd hope they'd have pockets, because everybody deserves pockets. Anyways, moving along. This guy hangs out a fair amount above the fabric of the pocket. You have a very, very solid here, like 3/4 inch worth of knife hanging up above your pocket. This is very nice for extraction, and having this little bit of these screws here give you a little bit of extra along with this one in the back, make it very easy to pull out of said pocket, but at the same time, this definitely carries very shallow. So if you're a deep carry person, you will be deeply disappointed. Well, shallowly disappointed. Next thing, they could definitely have gone thinner behind the edge here. If we look at the very tip of this guy, what we see here is it's not the thickest thing ever, right? But it could definitely have thinned out more. If we compare this, for instance, to the Zulu, we see, yeah, that's a little bit of a thicker tip. I would have much preferred to have seen either thinner stock, allowing them to go a little bit, thinner with their natural, or to do some kind of a hollow grind, which might have been very, very nice. It feels like it's being designed for durability and at the cost of some of the cutting performance. It's not terrible, right? It's not like, oh my God, ugly, thick behind the edge, but this is Rayot. Unfortunately, they have had this trouble over and over again. They tend to like to grind things thicker than I think they really should be. And so this is a little bit thick there. And I think this would be nicer with either a little bit thinner stock or a hollow grind of some variety, or just a thinner grind more generally. Next thing, the lock bar access on this guy could be a little bit better. What you can see here is that these two liners are exactly the same height, right? There appears to be no lowering of this front liner here. And as a result, the only way to really get in there and disengage the lock bar is by jamming your thumb down into this little gap created by these two little cutouts here, like that. It's relatively straightforward to do, but it is always nice when I have just a little tiny bit of, this is a more dramatic example, but you can see here on the Ontario Rat 2 here, this scale on the top here is scalloped out a little bit more, which just makes it easy to get your finger in there and move laterally to do this, relative to this guy where you kind of have to jam the thumb down and then move. And so that's definitely an area where there could be an improvement here. And then finally on the bad side, the balance on this guy is a little bit further back than I might like. This kind of makes sense. Copper is a very heavy material, right? But as a result, I would have liked to have seen a little bit of scalloping, like pull some material out of the titanium back here to balance it out and put that balance exactly where I want it to be. It's not terrible, but it ends up feeling a little bit more on the back heavy side. And again, it makes sense given the copper back here, but that's something they could have designed around a little bit. So I'd like to see the balance move a little bit more forward, and that to me is the bad. It has a balance a little further back. Lock bar access could be better. They could go thinner behind the edge, and they probably should. The carry on this guy is quite shallow. It has very prominent pivot hardware for whatever reason, and it feels a little bit bigger than it kind of is, but yeah, I don't quite know what to make of that. On the ugly front, unfortunately, there is one ugly issue, and it is right here. What we see here is at the very bottom of the blade here, Rayot completely screwed this bit up. So what we see here is that they have not only the sharpening choil here, this little area which sticks out and allows you to get all the way up to the edge of the knife. And so here's an example of a really good, effective sharpening choil, where you can see here the choil here extends past the grade, past the grind there, and allows you to, actually, there are even better ones out there in the world. What's a good example here? Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay, Rat 2 here. But you can see here, this little hole here extends past the grind such that you are able to very, very nicely sharpen all the way to the back edge. Rayot has not done that. This is a little bit too short. But more importantly, as they were sharpening the knife, they just stopped at a certain point. They said, yeah, it's close enough. And they did not finish sharpening the knife. And so there's kind of this area where it kind of goes off to the end. And to be fair, it feels like the majority of the blade on the bottom here is sharpened, but there is a little unsharpened area in the back here, and it's just ugly, unfortunately. Sharpening choils are not a particularly difficult thing to get right, but Rayot is one of the companies that very, very regularly has this pain point of their grinds don't go far enough back, and as a result, they end up with issues at the blade blade heel, right? And they appear not to even see this. This, for whatever reason, this should have stopped, right? This should have like, nope, we're sending that one back, resharpen it, regrind it, something like that. But they didn't. And so to me, that is really, really ugly. This either needs a bigger sharpening choil going this way so that they can sharpen all the way to the edge, or they needed to do a better job, grinding it a little bit further back and then sharpening it a little bit further back. But as it stands, unfortunately, this is ugly. That's not the way that this bit should be done here, in my estimation. And to me, that ends up looking like a mistake rather than a design decision. So to me, that is ugly. The blade heel there is not very good. Final conclusion, to zoom back out, so to speak, this is a very nice little knife. It's got a fine price and neat approach to lock bar insert. It's got solid ergonomics, a nice blade in action, a choice of opening methods, good finishing, and a very, very nice aesthetic design. It is in a strange space between being relatively small and relatively big, with prominent pivot hardware, a grind, and a blade that could definitely thin out a little bit. Bit of room for improved lock bar access, a shallow clip, a balance that's a little further back than I'd like, and a blade heel that shows that, well, Rayon might be top of the pack overseas. They've still got some rooms to grow, right? But this, to me, isn't just a knife. This is an aesthetic. The way that this knife makes the most sense is by looking at it and going, yeah, that's a look, right? It is a solid knife. It's a fine daily tool, right? But and it would work. Look, carrying it, and I enjoyed it. It works great. But the biggest thing this has going for it is the look. It is simultaneously very Peña and very different from his norm. And I think the end result is a knife that is both beautiful and practical, right? And I think, to me, that ends up being the final conclusion here. If you just want a knife, you can get a lot of knife for $275. There are lots of pieces out there at that kind of a price point that are quite good. And some of those options won't have the same missteps kind of down here that have been made. And so there are definitely lots of benefits and have lots of different form factors. You can get thinner, you can get lighter, etc. $275, the sky is your oyster. You got all kinds of options there. But none of those options out there are going to have this particular look, this particular style, this set of aesthetics and accents, which make this a very interesting and very cool blend of traditional and modern and also a little bit of military. It just feels really, really cool. And so that's my conclusion here. This is a knife that is really, really cool and also happens to be a great everyday carry tool. So if you're loving the look and you want a nice little tool to go with, then I could very easily see you saying bravo to this little guy. But otherwise, I can see you marching right on past. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and I hope I didn't penalize him too badly for that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.